are colonizers. Yes, we are. I got to be honest about it. We really are. And I know white people right now are saying, I'm not a colonizer. Oh, you hurt my feelings. Well, you are. Probably in your mindset, in your ideology, you probably do have the mentality of a colonizer, because most white people do, and I'll tell you why. 500 years ago, our colonizing culture, white European culture, was born, and we set out to steal things, resources, and that were not ours. We colonized, we enslaved all over the world. We enslaved Africans. We tried to dehumanize them and tell them, manipulate them, and gaslight them by telling them that they are not equal to us, that they are as an animal, and that the only real human are white people. Oh, I don't see color. Oh, it's a black man's fault that he's in the position. Well, what about black on black crime? I mean, it goes on and on and on. You know, I mean, I could sit here all day and give you examples. All lives matter. I mean, it just goes on all day. Black people ask for justice. White people find a way to try to obscure it, to try to take away from it, to try to demean it. We are colonizers. And I say that based on our behavior, collectively as white people. And until we stop being gaslighters and colonizers, white people are on a path of self-destruction. White supremacy, the lies of white supremacy, colonizing mentality has never brought the white man happiness, and it never will. It's toxic, dysfunctional, and self-defeating, and it's not helping us. And now there's all this white rage, because when the abuser loses control, he gets angry. And then Trump was born because we had a black president, and he was perfect because he was racist. And that's what white America wanted, because they're angry, because they felt like they were losing control. As colonizers have to have control, and we had a black president, and everybody just shit all over themselves. White people just freak the fuck out. Oh my God, we're losing control. We have a black president. He's going to oppress us and enslave us. God knows we're going to be whipped and lynched. This is literally, I think, some of the thoughts, the subconscious. I'm exaggerating, but in a way it's true. The greatest fear of the colonizer is all that evil, vile shit that we did will be done up unto them, us. And that's why there's so much white rage. The numbers are changing. Pretty soon, white people will not be the majority. The abuser loses control. So what do? We continue gaslighting. We continue with white rage. White domestic terrorism on the rise, the greatest threat in America. White people are enraged because they can no longer control their victims, black and brown people, the way that they want to. They're losing some of their power, some of their positions, some of their privilege. They feel threatened. So here we are, in a state of crazy, utter chaos. That's why I say the lies of white supremacy is our destruction.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Again, this is a presenter Jintuk Stories, and I'm hoping that you're great and fine wherever you're watching us from. Now, as you know, I always try to bring a more thought-provoking videos, more educative videos, so that we can get to talk to each other, we can get to learn from all these things, crazy things that are happening around us. Indeed, it's a crazy time seeing a lot of things are happening. Now, it is coming to the realization of white people that self-hate is causing the hate towards black people is causing them to have what is called the self-destruction, and they don't know that this is self-destructing them. While stereotypes goes to black people that black people are always raged, you know, it turns out that majority of white folks, they are always raged. And the rage has been proved initially when we see a couple of black folks so calm with everything that are happening, and then white folks are asking themselves, why are black folks so calm? We expect them to be raged, and this makes them in turn to be raged. I know it sounds diabolic, but yes, it's happening. A couple of videos I want us to watch, they are thought-provoking, and it's going to show you the white rage that some of African American professors have always tried to talk about. I want us to watch this video. As you know, I'm your presenter, Jintok Stories, and if you're watching this video for the first time, I'll most definitely ask you to subscribe to our channel, join our membership, and don't forget to like the video so that the people who are like-minded like you can come and watch the video. I hope you find value in the commentaries that I make. If you wish to support me, I have my Cash App account on my bio. I'll most definitely appreciate. So with that being said, let's watch the video. I'll be back and then I'll share my thoughts at the end of it. Let's watch. I'll be back.
Joe Biden's running for a second term. I know. He's old, but he's better than Trump. I'll be voting for him. Yeah, me too. Wish we had a better option, though. Yeah, well, at least it's not Trump. We gotta pick the lesser of two evils. Yeah, I guess so. A few months later. Oh my God. Joe Biden stepped down, and now Vice President Kamala Harris is running for office. I don't know why you're excited, Nick. Kamala Harris is pro-Israel. She's a genocidal maniac. We're going to call her Genocide Harris. Wait a minute. Vice President Harris hasn't changed any policies or thought processes than Biden when it comes to Israel and Palestine. She would be way better for black people. She has a history of trying to make law enforcement and just the judicial system more transparent. Trump wants to take away those things and give police more immunity to kill us black people. Like, we're literally going through a slow genocide here as African Americans. I thought that y'all understood that. That's why y'all said we're brothers and sisters. The only real difference is that she's black. Well, now you want to make this a race thing. After we stood up for you during Black Lives Matter, you're going to vote for Genocide Harris? What the fuck are you talking about? Trump is literally going to do way worse in Palestine. You know that, don't you? Oh, I didn't say I was voting for Trump. I just said I wasn't voting for Kamala. Then who are you voting for? I didn't say Trump. And what about us here? As black people, we're going to be affected if Trump wins. Y'all will be affected too, but like, we're going through our own genocide. Don't you care? Like, we even promoted your movement during our movement, which was overshadowed by your movement and everybody else's. Let me just be honest. I'm not voting for it, Nick.
Y'all are so blinded by hate. Let me tell you how racism is going to keep the middle class stuck. America has a long, ugly history of people hating black and brown folks, so much so that they're willing to vote against their own survival just to keep their own racist ideologies alive. Time and time again, working class white Americans have been tricked into supporting policies that make them poorer, sicker, and more desperate, all because those in power tell them that they're going to punish black people and immigrants and other marginalized groups. Donald Trump's tax plan is the latest proof of this self-destructive cycle. His policies will hurt 95% of Americans, especially working class white Americans who make up a large percentage of his base, but yet they will still support him. Why? Because his campaign fuels their hate, distracting them from the fact that they too are being robbed. They are so determined to see black people struggle, so obsessed with upholding white supremacy that they will literally vote to make themselves poor if it means keeping the lie alive. Meanwhile, the ultra-rich, who don't care about race at all, just about staying rich and in power, laugh as they continue to collect wealth off the backs of struggling Americans. Trump's tax plan is not just about economics. It's a weapon of mass distraction, designed to use racism as a smokescreen while the rich steal from the poor. This isn't anything new. It's the same trick used throughout history. From the days of slavery, when rich plantation owners convinced poor whites to fight for a system that oppressed them to Jim Crow laws, to today's voter suppression and economic exploitation. The question I have is, when will people wake up? How much suffering will it take for them to see that the real enemy isn't black and brown people? It's the billionaires and the politicians robbing them blind while feeding them lies. This is the truth that racists don't want to admit. The very policies they think will hurt black and brown folks will hurt them first. And when they find out that they've been used as pawns in a game that's designed to keep them struggling, it may be too late.
I'm going to step on a bunch of people's feet when I say this. You are not being discriminated against just because you are not centered in the story. I need people to marinate in that, sit with that. You are not being oppressed by other people talking about various histories or focusing on various literature. None of those things are directly harmful to you. The way some folks will literally try to spin it as if talking about, let's take an example, if talking about Black history is harmful to them somehow. They never prove it. They never have any tangible examples of the actual harm of discussing Black history. It's all based upon people's feelings, which if we're basing things upon people's feelings, there's a whole group of Black people who would love to talk about our feelings about things. Our feelings are never considered in these conversations, but the idea that it is oppressive to certain groups of folks to learn Black history is wild. That is somehow harmful and detrimental to these folks to learn actual history, things that have actually happened, as opposed to those things that actually happened, is wild. It shows me that y'all have never truly been oppressed because of your color of your skin. Like, y'all have never experienced that. When I'm having these discussions here on this forum and folks come on and they leave their comments when I ask them for examples of how this is oppressive to them, you know what some of those comments are? Black history section at the bookstore. Netflix having a whole Black section. The Black hair care aisle. Do y'all see how that's like wild? That other people simply existing, simply talking about existing, or in the case of the hair care aisle, simply caring for our bodies is somehow oppressive to folks who are so used to being centered that they lose their marbles when they hear or learn or are confronted with the idea that other people exist in this world and may want a little scalp moisturizer or may want to read a book that talks about our experiences, or may want to watch a love story that features Black love. That's the worst you gotta deal with? The idea that other people simply exist? That's the worst you have to deal with? Also, let me say this, because y'all think that everything Black people do is cool without giving Black people credit for it. Oppression is not fun. Being oppressed is not cute. Being harmed in so many different ways just because of the people that you come from is literally not fun. And I don't know why so many people want to be oppressed. I mean, outside of the fact that y'all think that everything Black people do is cool. I mean, a bunch of y'all walking around with do-rags right now trying to get waves. And I'm like, baby, you enjoy those cornfield looking locks. Like, that's fine. Baby, y'all don't even know what this stuff is for. A bunch of y'all were throwing oil in your hair and like y'all didn't know what that stuff was for. Like, it's weird. It's strange. It's odd. It's getting strange. It's okay if you're not centered in the story. It's okay. Other people exist. Other people could tell their perspectives. Other people matter too. Like, wasn't that y'all big thing that all lives matter? Isn't this a prime example of that? Breathe. It's okay. Other people exist. You'll be fine. You'll survive.
I still, for the life of me, will never ever understand how anyone believed that Donald Trump winning would be a better option or a better choice than Kamala Harris winning, or that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump would be exactly the same. Now, I'm one of those that understand, as a Democratic voter, how weak the messaging apparatus truly is. They're not the most clear on how they're different from Republicans on a multitude of different issues, Palestine being one. Now, with Kamala Harris, she was crystal clear on how she differed from Donald Trump on a lot of different issues, to include Palestine. But I think the Democratic Party as a whole did a lot of damage to Kamala and her chances in 2024 because they weren't clear. And I know for a lot of people in the Democratic Party, we give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt and believe that because these are adults, that they can find information on their own. I don't personally believe that. I have always believed that the overwhelming majority of voters in this country are illiterate when it comes to politics. So they're not going to know where to look, what to look for. And if they do start looking, they might start looking for confirmation bias of things that they already believe. So if they believe that there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, the confirmation bias that they're going to look for is how the Democrats and the Republicans are similar on these issues. So it is incumbent upon the Democratic Party establishment to work on their messaging apparatus. Even if the Democratic voters are basically saying that they're not going to participate in protests, you won't be seeing them at these town halls, that they're going to be sitting out for the next 4 years, specifically the 92%. The politicians still have work to do. They still have to show that they are willing to fight. And for a lot of these Democratic politicians, they are not trying to meet the moment. They're not trying to meet the moment. A lot of these older Democrats are not trying to give up power to the younger generation. There's absolutely no reason why AOC and Jasmine Crockett shouldn't be front and center in the Democratic Party, because they are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And a lot of these older Democrats are trying to engage in respectability politics with a party, a large portion of the country that doesn't give a fuck about respect. Even the current sitting president of the United States that is literally trying to undermine the Constitution. We are so beyond respectability politics. In the next couple of years, the Democrats have to work on their messaging apparatus. They have to break it down, Barney style, in a way that the dumbest voter in this country can understand. And I'm going to stress, the dumbest voters in this country can understand. I know that the Democrats are still trying to hold on to this PC messaging, but at this current juncture, we have to be comfortable calling people exactly what they are. Because if you fell for a Trump scam again, you are dumb. A lot of these Trump voters are losing their jobs, losing their benefits. Their families are being deported. They are literally watching their families being genocided because this man basically says he wants to turn Gaza into a resort town. So they need to understand just how dumb it was to vote for this man. You're not smart voting for a man that's literally telling you that he's going to harm you. You are dumb. And that's what the Democratic Party has to start with. That we have a bunch of dumb voters in this country. And when you start at that honest point, then you can actually start doing your messaging that becomes more effective. And you can sell the populist platform that benefits a lot of these voters, even the dumb ones.
You know, Republican voters love to say, Donald Trump is your president. Why can't you accept it? Donald Trump is your president. You need to get over it. But I hope you guys know, for most of us, we have accepted it. We understand he is the president. Some of us think the way he became president is a little shaky. Probably needs to have some extra eyes look into that. But at the end of the day, we know he's in the Oval Office. The problem is, it does not stop there, okay? It's never supposed to stop there. See, when you guys vote, and your leadership understands this, your representatives understand this, when you guys vote, you think voting that person in means you send them to Washington, and then they wave a magic wand, and they fix all of your problems. You think, I voted for Donald Trump, he won. Now, just by him being there, everything that I was concerned with before he became president is going to change. What do I have to follow up with him about? He's there, he's gonna do it. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not Hogwarts, okay? This is not the Ministry of Magic. He's not showing up there and saying a spell or two, and you have lower grocery prices. You have more affordable health care. You have all the things that are currently making your life more difficult fixed. No, those changes take actual work, okay? They take negotiation. They take litigation. They take all of the pressure that comes from the people in order for our congressmen, our senators, and the president himself to act in our best interests, not in their own. It's funny you guys say you don't like socialism, but you seem to love the idea of the government taking care of all your problems once you get the people in there that you like. I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that is not our reality, okay? We absolutely need to keep questioning what these people do every single day. The pressure people have been putting on these senators, the pressure people have been putting on this congressman is why they are telling the muskrat that he can no longer act with unilateral power. I bet you if we weren't constantly asking, what does he do? Why is he doing it? How does he have the power to do it? Isn't this constitutional or unconstitutional? I bet you if those lawsuits weren't getting filed and those judges weren't looking into these cases because of the people constantly asking questions, we would not have seen any change on that matter. This is why the American people cannot just accept that he's president, go home, and not ask questions. That's how we got here to begin with. So instead of focusing on all of us complaining, I'm telling you right now, you guys need to be complaining a lot more.
It's obvious that many of you do not understand what restorative justice is. Restorative justice is compassion. Restorative justice is compassion for the victim first, for community, and it is also compassion for the offender. Restorative justice gives the victims an opportunity to be heard by community, by the offender. It gives victims the opportunity to say, this is what happened to me, this is what you did to me, and this is how it affected my life. Restorative justice gives victims a feeling of safety amongst the masses. It lets them know they are not alone. It validates the harm that has been caused to the victims and reminds victims that they have an entire community that loves and cares for them. Restorative justice is compassion for community because it brings community in to be witnesses, not mediators, but witnesses to a process in which our community restores order and brings the fold back together. Restorative justice is compassion for the community because it shows community that there is accountability here for each and every one of us, whichever side of accountability we stand on, whether we are being held accountable or the offender is being held accountable for the crimes they have committed against us. Restorative justice is compassion for the offender because what is the alternative? Lock them up and throw away the fucking key? Just discard them like they're trash? No. Restorative justice gives Shaheem the opportunity to hear what they've done wrong and come up with a plan with community to not reoffend anyone in community. Restorative justice gives Shaheem the opportunity to right their wrongs and come back home, to not be ostracized, to not be left without a people. And unfortunately, we don't practice restorative justice in our community. We fall back on the white man's idea of justice for black lives, and that is just fucking punitive. In order for restorative justice to happen, Shaheem has got to be willing to come to the table. And these victims of Shaheem's have tried many times to communicate with Shaheem, but Shaheem does not value the lives of their victims. What Shaheem does is offends and then blocks, like the victims never even existed and certainly do not matter. And after Shaheem blocks their victims, then his flying fucking monkeys swarm their victims and makes the situation that much worse. Our community deserves better than that. And none of us are above accountability. I'm not trying to throw Shaheem away, but Shaheem has resisted the call-in one after another, and this has gotten bigger and bigger because the body count of victims continues to grow. And this community has to put a stop to it because Shaheem has a type, and I happen to be Shaheem's type of victim. And if I don't stop it from happening to someone else, I could be next. You could be next. And that fear right there is what destabilizes and disconnects our community. Restorative justice is in order, so we can protect, care for, and clean our own communities without outside interference. And if you have a problem with people being doxxed, so do I. That's one of the things that we need to be talking to Shaheem about. If you have a problem with people calling Shaheem's job, Shaheem is a fucking therapist. And there is a level of accountability in that profession to do no harm. And you should also consider if Shaheem had respected their victims enough to actually sit down at the table and discuss the harm that they have caused in community, those victims would not now be seeking other alternatives for justice. Restorative justice is in order, and you've not seen it practiced very often, but that doesn't mean that this isn't it. That doesn't mean that this isn't it. You just don't like it because Shaheem is your problematic fucking fave.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and I believe you've seen it for yourself the way I've also seen it for myself, and this is just a proof of the things that I usually tell you in my channel. How come right now white folks are regretting for the hate that they've been having towards black folks? And they painted you as the person who is being raged, yet it is them that the ones who have always been raged. Right. And so, racism and hatred towards black people have historically led to self-destruction of white societies in various ways, from economic decline to moral decay and political instability. While white supremacist ideology were constructed to maintain dominance, they have often backfired. And you know that, right? Weakening the very systems that were meant to uphold them. The consequences of anti-black racism are deeply intertwined with the collapse of Western societies, as they waste resources, foster internal division, and prevent necessary adaptation of global changes. And it is true. You can look at the stats. There's so many ways that America has lost its resources towards racism. Because, for example, they fail to employ a black person, yet the black person has the manpower to do a given task than a white person who is also applying for the same job. Being that he is a white person, he'll be chosen not based on the merit, but based on the color. So this shows you how American system is losing its resources through racism. And this is leading to the harm of white folks. One major way racism leads to self-destruction is through economic inefficiency and self-sabotage. By deliberately excluding black people from opportunities, white societies have often denied themselves access of some of the best talents, labor, and innovation. And I think I've said about this. For example, The destruction of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and similar acts of racial violence wiped out prosperous black communities that could have contributed significantly to the national economy. Instead of fostering shared economic growth, racism has led to stagnant economies, brain drain, and over-reliance on exploitative systems that eventually collapsed, such as slavery and colonialism. And I think if you heard the first creator, he was talking about how cruel, of how gruesome they were towards black people. And they are the colonizers. They are the enslavers. And this is something that they did deliberately to black folks. Another key factor to consider while trying to analyze all this that is happening, you asking yourself, why is this hate? Why did these people have so much hate towards black folks is the moral and ethical decay that racism breeds within the white society. Societies built on oppression of others inevitably face internal contradictions. On one hand, they promote ideals of freedom and democracy, while on the other, they engage in mass oppression and dehumanization. This hypocrisy creates a widespread societal unrest, guilt, and resistance from within. That's why we have phrases like white guilt. It happens most of the time because while you are out there trying to appeal to people of how good you are, of how pure you are, but deep down, you know very well that it's not that way. And as the saying goes, if there's a person that you cannot lie to, it's yourself. And I think this is happening to them. That's why we have what is called the white guilt. On the other hand, they promote ideals of freedom and democracy, while on the other, they engage in mass oppression and dehumanization. This hypocrisy creates a widespread societal unrest, guilt, and resistance from within. Many white people today struggle with their ancestors' legacies, leading to deep social psychological conflicts that manifest as increasing political division, distrust in institutions, and even self-hatred amongst younger generation who reject their racial history. So this is something that happens for the longest time. If you're asking yourself this question, here you have the answer. Another key factor that I want us also to have a discussion about is racism also weakens national security and global influence. Western nations that have relied on racism to divide and conquer are now facing the consequences of those divisions. Internally, racial tensions tend to civil unrest, crime, and resistance movements that destabilize governments internationally. Countries that once colonized or exploited are rising in power, forming alliances that counter Western dominance. For instance, African nations are increasingly working with China, Russia, and the global South, reducing their dependency on West, which is now struggling to maintain control over global resources and markets. So you get to understand where the oppressed are now waking up and they are finding their own solution. They are finding their own ways to come up again. There is one more thing that I would like to address just before concluding. Racism has led to demographic crisis in Western nations. White supremacist policies, including segregation and anti-immigration laws, have reduced the ability of these societies to adapt to changing global demographics. As birth rate declines among white populations and immigration becomes essential for economic survival, many Western nations are caught in a paradox. They need non-white workers and citizens to sustain their economies. The historical racism prevents them from fully integrating these populations. This resistance to change accelerates their decline as they become unable to compete with more diverse and adaptable societies. While the United States is trying to push away immigrants who are indeed the people who are working in these places, countries like China are doing the opposite. Asian countries are doing the opposite. So what does this mean, or what implication does this have to the United States when you talk about the global market and economic shifts. This means that very soon the United States will become will be rendered useless in the face of productivity and in the face of market and options that people may want to invest in or explore. This is Representative Jintuk Stories. I'm hoping that you're great. I hope the commentary that I shared with you, it's so valuable. If you find values in my video, you can consider subscribing to my channel, join my membership, really get to see what I can offer you. And until then, you can also support me through my Cash App account, Kendrick Candle. It's on my bio. I'll most definitely appreciate your support. Until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.